Karen never considered herself a villain. In fact, in her mind, she was the last line of defense against chaos, the one person in the neighborhood who actually cared. Others might call her a busybody, a control freak, a nightmare wrapped in a cardigan. But she preferred the term leader. And as the president of the Homeowners Association, it was her sworn duty to uphold the sacred laws of suburban living. At 7 a.m. sharp, as she did every morning, she stepped onto her perfectly manicured lawn with a steaming cup of black coffee. No cream, no sugar, just bitterness, exactly how she liked it. From here, she could see everything. A sprinkler misaligned, spraying more onto the sidewalk than the grass. A trash bin left out an entire hour past collection time. A gasp. Plastic flamingos in a front yard. An absolute travesty. Karen muttered under her breath as she pulled out her clipboard of justice. She had an HOA fine for everything. Overgrown hedges, $50. Non-neutral paint color, $100 lawn gnome in front yard. Immediate citation. Nothing happened in her neighborhood without her approval. But this morning, something was off, a disturbance in the force. She felt it before she even saw it, a shadow darkening her perfectly crafted world. And then, she saw it. Parked in a driveway 2 houses down sat an abomination, a brand new white Tesla Model S. Karen's breath caught in her throat. The sleek, futuristic shape, the smugness radiating from its polished surface, the complete and utter lack of a gasoline engine. Her fingers tightened around her coffee mug as a single whispered word escaped her lips. No. This was her neighborhood. Gas-powered vehicles only. Big, loud, real cars, the kind that roared when you started them. Not this. She stormed back inside. This could not stand. 15 minutes later, Karen stood outside the offending home, clipboard in hand, her expression locked in what she called her intimidation mode, a look that had successfully scared off countless Girl Scouts, door-to-door salesmen, and one unfortunate Amazon delivery driver who left a package slightly to the left of her porch. She rang the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, the door cracked open. A young man in his late 20s wearing a hoodie and sweatpants blinked at her like he had just woken up. "Can I help you?" Karen squinted. He had the look. One of them. The kind of person who worked remotely, who drank matcha lattes, who probably said things like, "Have you tried crypto?" at parties. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was war. "Yes, you can," she said, already flipping to a blank violation form. "That car, that thing in your driveway, it needs to go." The guy frowned, rubbing his temple. What?" Karen took a step closer, lowering her voice like she was revealing a deep, dangerous secret. "This is a traditional neighborhood. We don't allow Teslas." He blinked again, slower this time. "I don't think that's a real rule." Karen let out a short, sharp laugh, the kind that made grown men nervous. "Well, it is now. I'll be issuing a formal notice. You have 48 hours to remove it, or you'll be facing fines." The guy just smirked. He smirked. "I'll think about it." And with that, he shut the door in her face. Karen stood there, stunned. That had never happened before. People complied when she spoke. People feared the HOA. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her clipboard. He thought this was a joke. He had no idea who he was messing with. Karen was seething. As she marched back to her house, her mind raced with thoughts of revenge. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about control, about order, about sending a message that Karen is not to be ignored. She had spent years molding this neighborhood into a well-oiled machine, where every house looked like it belonged in a catalogue, and every resident knew their place. And now, This Tesla-driving tech bro was threatening all of that. By the time she reached her front porch, her hands were shaking, not with fear, but with pure, unfiltered rage. This called for an emergency HOA meeting. The HOA meetings were usually held once a month, but for matters of great importance, Karen had the power to call one at any time. And in her mind, there was no greater crisis than a smug little Tesla defiling her precious neighborhood. She sent out the emergency email with a subject line that read, "Urgent HOA meeting, threat to our community." An hour later, she sat at the long wooden table in the HOA clubhouse, tapping her nails impatiently. Only 2 people showed up: Susan, her longtime friend and fellow HOA enforcer, and Greg, a man who never actually cared about the meetings, but always showed up for the free snacks. Karen clenched her jaw. "Where is everyone?" she hissed. Susan shrugged. "I think they're at Jim's barbecue." Jim's barbecue. That traitor. Karen took a deep breath, shoving the betrayal aside for now. There were bigger things at hand. She pulled out a printed photo of the Tesla and slammed it onto the table like it was a mugshot of a wanted criminal. "We have a problem." Susan leaned in, adjusting her glasses. "Oh, that's a nice car." Karen snapped her head toward her. "A nice car? A nice car?" Susan winced. Greg grabbed another handful of pretzels, completely unbothered. Karen stood up, pointing at the image like it was a crime scene. "This is not just a car. This is an attack. This is the beginning of the end. First, it's one Tesla. Next, we have charging stations in our neighborhood. And before you know it, it's an invasion of Silicon Valley types who don't respect our traditions." Susan blinked. "Karen, I don't think electric cars are that." Karen slammed her hands onto the table. "It's not just the car, Susan. It's everything it represents. The HOA rules exist for a reason. And if we let this slide, what's next? People painting their houses purple? Someone putting up a garden gnome army in their front yard? Chaos, Susan. Chaos." Susan sat back, realizing that Karen was on one of her rampages again. Greg, mouth full of pretzels, finally spoke. "Why don't you just fine him or something?" Karen's jaw clenched. "I tried. He laughed in my face." That got Susan's attention. "Wait, he didn't take you seriously?" Karen shook her head. He smirked. Susan inhaled sharply. "Oh, he smirked. Yeah, that's bad." Karen nodded furiously. "He thinks he can just park his ridiculous little Elon Musk worship machine in our neighborhood and get away with it. I won't allow it. We have 2 options." Susan hesitated. "Do I want to hear these options?" "Option 1, Karen continued, ignoring her. "We launch a psychological warfare campaign until he caves and moves the car." Greg perked up. "Psychological warfare?" "I mean," Karen huffed, "we make him so miserable that he wants to get rid of the car. We ticket him every day. We report him to the city. We accidentally block his driveway with trash cans. We strategically inconvenience him until he gives up." Susan frowned. "What's option 2? Karen's eyes darkened. "We get rid of it. Permanently." Silence. Greg slowly lowered his pretzels. What do you mean by permanently?" Karen didn't answer, but Susan saw that look in her eyes. The same look Karen had when she forced the Johnsons to repaint their house after they dared to pick the wrong shade of beige. Susan sighed. "Karen, I don't know what you're planning, but maybe just let it go. It's just a car." Karen turned toward her so slowly it was terrifying. "Just a car?" Susan shrank in her seat. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is war." That night, Karen put her plan into motion. First, she started with petty annoyances. A fake violation notice slapped onto the Tesla's windshield. calling the city to report it as an abandoned vehicle, hoping they'd tow it, sending anonymous complaints about how it was an eyesore and damaging property values. But nothing worked. The Tesla remained. And the worst part? The owner never reacted. No angry outbursts, no complaints, no nothing. It was as if he was completely unfazed, which drove Karen into a full-blown obsession. Every morning, she checked if the car was still there. Every night, she fantasized about waking up to find it gone. But the final straw came when she overheard her neighbors admiring it. Standing at the edge of her yard, she heard two people talking near the Tesla. "It's so nice," one of them said. "Yeah, I'd love to have one," the other agreed. Karen felt something inside her snap. Not only was the car still there, but it was gaining support. It was spreading. The infection had begun. That's when she made up her mind. The Tesla had to be destroyed, and she was going to do it herself. Karen had never committed a crime before. Sure, she had bent the rules, sent HOA violation notices for rules that didn't technically exist, fined people for things that weren't explicitly illegal, and maybe once or twice, accidentally, sent anonymous complaints to the city about neighbors she didn't like. But this was different. This was justice. This was about sending a message. The Tesla had mocked her. Every morning, it sat in that driveway, shining in the sunlight like it belonged there, like it wasn't an affront to everything she stood for. And the owner? Smirking, ignoring her, acting like he was above the law. Karen knew what she had to do, and she was ready. It was 2 a.m. when she made her move. Dressed in all black, Karen slipped out of her house like a suburban ninja. She had prepared for this moment, studying the neighborhood's security cameras for weeks. She knew which houses had motion lights, which driveways had Ring doorbells, and most importantly, she knew that the Tesla owner had no visible cameras outside his house. Perfect. A gas canister sloshed in her grip as she crept down the sidewalk, her heart pounding with righteous fury. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhilaration. She was about to make history. The first HOA-enforced electric vehicle ban in America. She reached the driveway. The white Tesla Model S sat there, pristine, its smooth curves taunting her. Karen sneered. "Not so smug now, are you?" she muttered. She uncapped the gas canister and began pouring, the strong smell filling the air as liquid splashed across the hood, the roof, the tires. Every drop felt like revenge. This was for the sanctity of the neighborhood. This was for the diesel-powered trucks that belonged here. This was for every HOA president who had ever been ignored. By the time the gas can was empty, Karen was grinning. Now, for the grand finale. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a matchbox. Old-fashioned, reliable. She struck a match, watching as the tiny orange flame flickered to life. She took a deep breath. Goodbye, Elon's trash. And then, she dropped it. Whoosh! The fire exploded upward in a wave of heat and light, illuminating the entire street. The flames crawled hungrily over the Tesla, licking at the edges of its sleek white frame, turning its smug perfection into ashes. Karen staggered backward, eyes wide in pure, unfiltered joy. It was beautiful. Justice. Pure justice. And then, the sirens started. Karen froze. Red and blue lights flashed down the street, painting the houses in pulsing warning colors. She turned, panic gripping her chest, her mind racing. How? She had been so careful. She had planned everything. Her house was blocks away. There was no way anyone could have heard her. And then, a voice behind her. Well, that's unfortunate. Karen whirled around. A man stood in the shadows, watching the burning Tesla with an unreadable expression. Tall, broad shoulders, dark jacket. Karen's heart stuttered. Something about him felt familiar. Then he stepped forward, the firelight illuminating his face. Karen's stomach dropped. It was Elon Musk. Karen's brain short-circuited. Elon Musk, standing in front of her, watching her burn his car. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. Elon just sighed, shoving his hands in his pockets like he had seen this exact scenario play out before. "You know," he said casually, "I really liked that car." Karen couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. You, she stammered. "Own it?" "Yeah." Elon nodded toward the flaming wreckage. "Well, I did. Not so much anymore." Karen's entire body locked up. She wanted to run, to disappear, to rewind time and undo everything, but her feet wouldn't move. She felt Susan was right behind her, whispering, "Oh my God," under her breath. Elon glanced at the fire, then back at her, looking almost amused. "You really hate me that much?" Karen gasped. I didn't know." Elon just shook his head. "It's always the HOAs." And then the police stepped forward. "Ma'am, put your hands where we can see them." Karen snapped out of her trance, spinning toward the officers. Wait, I can explain." She couldn't. The fire raged behind her, undeniable proof of her crime. The neighbors were awake now, standing in their yards, watching the scene unfold with wide, horrified eyes. Someone was recording. Someone was laughing. Karen's empire was crumbling. "You don't understand," she screeched. He's ruining the neighborhood. I was protecting us." The officers didn't care. The cuffs clicked around her wrists. Karen screamed, but the only sound louder than her wailing was the laughter of the Tesla owner and Elon Musk's quiet, smug chuckle. Karen's entire world was collapsing. The cold steel of the handcuffs dug into her wrists, her arms locked behind her back as the officers tightened their grip. The flames from the Tesla roared behind her, a blazing testament to her downfall. The neighbors, her neighbors, stood outside their homes, watching, whispering, recording. "This is unreal. Did she really set it on fire? Wait, is that Elon Musk?" Karen's stomach twisted as the realization hit her full force. This wasn't just about the Tesla anymore. She was going viral, the one thing she had always feared. Karen had dedicated her life to controlling everything. The lawns, the fences, the trash cans. Every tiny detail of the neighborhood had been orchestrated under her iron rule. And now, she was powerless, a criminal, a laughingstock. And the worst part? Elon Musk was enjoying this. He stood a few feet away, watching her with that infuriatingly calm expression, hands in his pockets, like he had seen 1,000 Karens before her and knew exactly how this would end. The officer read Karen her rights, but her mind couldn't focus. She could hear everything. The distant wail of another fire truck approaching, the murmurs of people she had once controlled, the ping of text messages being sent as people spread the story like wildfire. Someone laughed, and that's when it hit her. She wasn't the one in control anymore. The police car door slammed shut, sealing Karen inside. Her heart pounded as she stared out through the glass, watching everything unfold outside. She could still see the white Tesla, or what was left of it. The once pristine electric car was now a smoldering blackened wreck, its sleek design melted into an unrecognizable mess. Elon Musk was talking to the officers, completely at ease, like this was just another Tuesday for him. He even had the audacity to chuckle. Karen's rage flared again. "What's so funny?" she snapped, her voice muffled behind the glass. Elon turned his head slightly, as if he had heard her, then smirked. That damn smirk. Karen slammed her shoulder against the door, but the cuffs kept her trapped, her face burning with humiliation. Then, her stomach dropped. One of the officers was handing Elon his phone back. They had already shown him the security footage. There was proof. It was over. Karen's breath hitched. The car started moving. Her own house flashed past the window, the neatly trimmed hedges, the perfectly painted shutters, her kingdom, her pride. And she realized something horrible. She would never be able to show her face here again. The news spread faster than wildfire. By morning, Karen's mugshot was everywhere. She had prided herself on keeping the neighborhood prestigious, on making sure every home looked perfect, on being the gatekeeper of order. Now, she was the biggest scandal the neighborhood had ever seen. The headlines were relentless. HOA president arrested for arson, sets Tesla on fire in fit of rage. Neighborhood Karen loses her mind, mistakes Tesla for the devil. Elon Musk laughs as whole leader destroys his car. Her name was trending. Her face was trending. The security footage was uploaded within hours. High definition, crystal clear evidence of her crime. Millions watched. Millions laughed. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that afternoon. Without Karen there to rule with an iron fist, the vote was unanimous. She was removed from her position. Her rule was over. But the internet wasn't done with her yet. Within a day, memes flooded social media. A burning Tesla with the caption, "The Last Stand of HOA Karen." A clip of her getting arrested with, "Don't touch my neighborhood" playing in the background. Photoshopped images of her as a comic book villain. Flames behind her, her HOA clipboard replaced with a Molotov cocktail. Her worst nightmare had come true. She wasn't feared anymore. She was a joke. As Karen stepped outside her house, clutching the boxes of her belongings, she felt the eyes of the entire neighborhood on her. Whispers, judging stares, smirks. Some people watched from their porches, arms crossed, shaking their heads. Some were recording her on their phones. Even Susan, her former best friend, stood near her own driveway, avoiding eye contact. Karen bit her lip, holding back the anger boiling inside her. She wanted to scream at them, remind them that she was the reason their neighborhood was perfect. But she knew it didn't matter anymore. She had lost. With one final look, she turned toward her car, threw her boxes into the trunk, and slammed the door shut. As she pulled out of the driveway for the last time, she caught sight of something infuriating in her rearview mirror. The Tesla. Not the burned one, a brand new one. Parked in the same driveway, shining in the morning sun. They had already replaced it. And standing beside it, grinning, was none other than Elon Musk. He gave her a slow, knowing wave. Karen screamed, slamming her foot on the gas and peeling out of the neighborhood. Forever.